for
And
Christmas.
hopefully there will be a part 4 on Easter, maybe.
Yeah, and then I'll have Groundhog Day. I'm going to be
And
taking
maybe
over the holidays.
all out the Eastern part 4. Why not?
Someone play the Easter Bunny.
Why
Oh,
not?
that could be so good. That could be so good.
Let's talk about a little bit about watching Walter.
Oh,
You
I
had
did.
you got an award for best actor
I
in
did
watching Walter.
Let's see. This may
I mean,
be
it is a short film. I think it was 30 minutes. I think is it 30
something
minutes?
like that. So anyway, is this it? This is. Oh yeah. There's my.
No way.
There it is. Best actor Stephen Tobolowsky in a short film, Watching Walter.
Congratulations.
Anyway,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Anyway, this is a true story. And the thing about true stories is they're always absolutely unbelievable. So this is a true story of a young Jewish boy growing up in Germany. He has learned his trade as a watchmaker, and he's sent to Auschwitz. And he's able to survive Auschwitz by working as a watchmaker.
So the film plays in the 40s in Germany.
Some of it. And some of it plays in the present. Now, I play Walter in the present, and there's two or three other Walters that play the young Walter.
Young and mid.
The young and mid, and then I play the old Walter. And it is, as a short movie, a lot of the best short movies become like poems. And that's kind of what this is. It is about survival, forgiveness, making the world better. And it's all so simple. And it all has to do with making these watches and dealing with your past and how you can cope with the hurt and damage you've had in your past and how you deal with it. But it's a beautiful movie, and it's won many film festivals now as a short film, best short film. It's won several. And I've heard that because of the notoriety of the film, it's attracting interest from Polish producers and filmmakers who wanted to make a movie about Auschwitz that is about something that goes toward repairing the injury to the universe that was. And so now there's talk about someone coming in and internationally making this a feature film, full-length feature film. So I've told the producer
they are taking the story of the short movie, the short film, and expanding and making it a.
So our producers, they have a full-length script written now, and they're presenting it to the various producers in Poland to see if we're going to turn this little movie into a big movie. And that's possible. The thing is, if you do nothing and wait for something to happen, a lot of times, never. And this is a case where the people they ran into Walter, who was working on watches in Los Angeles, and he told them his story, and they wrote to his story and showed it to him. Do we have this right? And then we did this short film, which is getting notoriety all over the country in film festivals. And so possibly, I haven't seen the full length. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it will be something. And, we'll see if it happens. Yeah. We'll see if it happens.
I hope so. It will.
Yeah.
So, Tobolowsky files.
Yes.
What happened to them? I mean, what was it? Was I think episode 99.
Yeah, 99. That's it. We stopped it. And I told David Shin, well, I have more, but I ended up, when I did the Tobolowsky files, I was lucky in that I had been injured. I had broken my neck in a fall, and so I had all this time. I couldn't act, I couldn't do anything, but I could write. So I started writing stories for the Tobolowsky Files, and at that time, David Chin, who's a podcaster and producer in Seattle, happened to call me on the phone and said, "Have you ever thought of doing a podcast?" Because off and on I would tell stories, from my career. He says, "Well, just do stories, your stories." I said, "Well, actually, I'm writing some stories now." So David and I didn't know what that would turn into or how that would turn out, but it turned into something really wonderful in that during all that time of my recovery from the broken neck, I was writing stories about my past and not stories about theater or drama or anything, but the girl I fell in love with. Things happen in life, like the girl I proposed to when I was 6 years old. 6 years old. She's the most beautiful girl I ever saw in my life. She lived on our block, Alice Nell Allen, and I was in love with her. So I started writing a story about my early romance of being 6 years old and falling in love with Alice Snell. And that became one of the stories in the Tobolowsky Files. And then my brother said that he had heard some of the stories. He said, "Well, I was at a funeral and Alice Snell Allen is here in town and she remembers you proposing to her and remembers, and she wants to talk to you about that." So I call Alice up and I'm finding this story that is a story that none of us could have guessed was happening in our neighborhood, that Alice was abused, Alice was beaten by her parents, Alice was neglected. Their black maid Claudie refused to leave the house and said, "I'm sleeping with her now and you're going to have to deal with me." So Claudie became Alice's protector. And then Alice said when her parents died, she never went to their funeral. She left and never went back again. But she said she did go to to Claudie's to
I, I can relate to that from my personal life.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Are you going to fess up? Are you
Do
going
what?
to tell us about it?
No, that's my interview with you.
Oh, you cheat. But these stories, true stories, became the Tobolowsky Files. And so I promised myself I would not embellish. I would try to make the stories as accurate as possible. And the thing is, when you tell a true story, it never gets old. The facts of the story, you never look back at the story and think like, "Oh, that isn't quite what happened with Groundhog Day," or "That isn't quite what happened with Alice." Because I spent my time just trying to tell the absolute truth and not embellish the stories kind of became like diamonds over time, just aged, and people refer to them. Uh, People from all over the world have heard them. And that's all David Chin. David Chin, we were doing it in Seattle, and then the radio station in Seattle heard it and said, "Can we put it on the radio here in Seattle?" So yes, we did. And then NPR and PRI, National Public Radio and Public Radio International, heard the stories and said, "Can we put them on our station?" And we go, "Sure. Yeah, of course." So it ended up all over the world. And I ended up getting letters from Japan, from Pakistan, from Israel, from everywhere, all these places that people hear the story. And because the stories are true, people kind of relate to them. And so I think once I finished episode 99, I was healed and I started working again. So I told David, I have to go back to work as an actor again and do that. But I ended up with 2 books of Simon and Schuster did 2 books, My Adventures with God and Dangerous Animals Club. Some of these stories. So I got a book deal.
Yeah, that's My Adventures with God. Did it result or came that book out of your um, insurance or health issues? You had the incident with I call him the Mango Man.
Yeah,
The
all of it.
incident with the Mango Man, and then you had the neck injury, broken neck, and you had bypass surgery.
I had bypass surgery. I was held hostage at gunpoint in a grocery store when I was like 22 years old. Like he had the gun to my head, and I got out of it. I talked my way out of it. Uh, Taught some showbiz stories, opening night on Broadway, stories about falling in love the first time when I fell in love with Beth, stories about the end of our relationship, and as truthfully as possible, story about falling in love with Anne, who's my wife now, and we've been married for like 36 years. Uh, True stories at different sections of our life. And so people have looked to these stories and they go like, well, that's kind of like me, or that's what I'm going through. And the stories don't age, like I said,
No,
because they're
they
true.
they repeat themselves.
They repeat themselves. They repeat themselves.
That brings me up to you also did a very rare, hard to find audiobook, A Good Day in Auschwitz.
Yeah, yeah. I did A Good Day in Auschwitz. So
In Auschwitz,
while
it's hard to find.
yes,
And
so I
why,
did.
when, and why did you record that?
Yeah, I during the period of time I was trying to recover, I was going back to the synagogue regularly because it was one of the few things I could do, and because I was couldn't do anything, I went to the. They have services early in the morning and late at night. Morning minyan and evening minyan. So I could go to both, and they need 10. Without 10, you can't read from the Torah. So I felt like if nothing else, I could contribute by being one of the 10. So I started going to synagogue every day, every night, every day of the week. And uh, you get a bunch of strange folk that are free to come into Minyan. Most of them are very old because they're not working, they have nothing to do, and they enjoy the Hebrew service
It's good coming together.
coming together. So there was like 10 or 12 of us. And there was this old guy in there that was kind of wacky, Abe. Uh, and he said, after Minyan, he says, want to come out to my apartment for a drink? I said, well, Abe, it's a little early for a drink. He says, never too early for a drink. Went over there. We had schnapps, which is what he called it. It was not schnapps. It was whatever he had. Usually schnapps was vodka, but sometimes it was also
No,
whiskey.
no
But it was
schnapps.
never schnapps.
No, schnapps. Original schnapps is something different, something else.
Something different. And we would play cards and poker, just the two of us. And Abe's, and while we're playing, I see Abe's arm come up and I see the
The
numbers,
tattoo?
the
Really?
tattoo, the
Really?
Auschwitz tattoo, his numbers
How old
here.
is he?
He was
Or
in his
was?
80s, in his 80s.
They must be very, very young then when he got the numbers tattooed.
Yeah, well, he was young. Uh, so because like in 2000 he was, so he was like 19, 20, something like that. I'm trying to figure out 40. So he started telling me he was at Auschwitz, and he started telling me the story of his life. And it was amazing. He started off with the story when he was just a young boy and all that, and then how society was changing, and then how how the current government was not fair or good. And then the Germans came in, and that was not fair and good. And then it became what it became. And Abe and his family was struggling to survive. And they ended up at a ghetto. And one of those ghettos, I think Warsaw Ghetto, I think it was one of those ghettos where the Germans were just trying to starve everyone to death. Like it was all walled off. You couldn't get away and there was no food. And then if that didn't work, they'd send you to Auschwitz. So Abe started telling me the story of his life, and it was so amazing and incredible. And I started going over to his house with pencil and paper. And I said, do you mind? No, sir, I do not mind. I do not mind at all.
With the schnapps.
With the schnapps. With the schnapps. Always with the schnapps. I do not mind. And he felt like he was king of the catbird, the emperor here. And so for the next year and a half or so, I'd play cards with Abe every morning after synagogue, and he would tell me the stories of his life. And I went back, and I remember one of the questions I asked him, Abe. I said, Abe, did you ever have a good day at Auschwitz? And he says, oh, many, many good days. I said, how is that possible? He said, well, because we would be working out in the fields and there would be flowers there. The beautiful things were growing. Something would smell sweet. And then we would, have a bite to eat for lunch and then fall asleep and we would dream. And then, of course, there were the women. And I go, what? He says, well, the women, at Auschwitz, I had women. I go, wait. You had relationships with a woman at Auschwitz? He says, oh, I fell in love at Auschwitz. I said, that's impossible. How is that even possible? Because they had the men's section completely different. He says, and he started telling me his story. It was absolutely incredible. Because of Abe's education in the school system, he was able to do math in his head very quickly, very easily. The people in the office at Auschwitz were Weimar, I believe they call it Weimar, not Nazi, but German soldiers, but not Nazis, but Weimar. They were poor farmers that, they weren't in it for the long haul. They were just trying to get by too, and they couldn't do arithmetic. And so the purpose of Auschwitz, they gathered all the potatoes and decided how many potatoes went to which concentration camp. And Abe could figure out in his head how many potatoes were in a barrel, were in a bushel, and how many could go to this camp, this camp, this camp. And he did the math for them so they didn't get sent to the Russian front where they would be killed. So the German soldiers protected Abe, kept him away from the Nazi guards, and worse. They had some real monsters there working in those camps. But some of the people were just German soldiers that were poor farmers, and they were trying to get out of this too without getting killed. And Abe told me the story of falling in love at Auschwitz.
In a Nazi camp.
In the Nazi camp. And the two of them fell in love. And then they met again afterwards, after he escaped from Auschwitz. And they took him to another death camp. And one morning he said he woke up and there was no one in the guard tower and the gate was open and there were no guards. And so they thought, it's a trap, it's a trick, they're going to kill us. But then slowly, they thought, oh, maybe the Allies are approaching and they're trying to save their own skins. And there were a lot of corpses on the ground. So they changed their clothes from their prison clothes to German uniforms. So they can go into these towns and not be arrested. But they had no place to go. They were sleeping in barns and one woman came out and said, "I know you're back there. Come on in, come in here," and she was going to turn him in and all that. Anyway, the story has many twists and turns, and the fact that he still was in contact, the woman that he loved, that they were in love at Auschwitz, she ended up going to Israel. He ended up eventually coming to America, but they still communicated. They still talked. But anyway, I wrote this story, Good Day at Auschwitz, and it's in My Adventures with God. The Kaddish and is part one of that story, and Good Day at Auschwitz. And it was about Abe and his survival, and it's an amazing, amazing story. The book is worth it just for
Yeah,
those stories. But I really love those two books.
it's available at Amazon.
Amazon, it's on
Amazon.
Amazon.
On
Simon and
Amazon available.
Schuster. They're good books, and they're not that expensive. Yeah, so and they're
No,
in
no,
paperback
it's
now
very
too.
good.
So
And
you got that
hardcover.
too. Hardcover and paperback. Yeah, it's just amazing.
A good read.
It's a good read, and it helped me survive writing the stories.
I need to address that too. There is a story circulating around about a Debbie in $2,400. What is the story
Deb,
about? In a
Deb,
suitcase, I think was or a card box or suitcase. Debbie, $2,400
oh
in a
God,
card box and fraud something.
this is all ringing a bell, but no, is this in the
I
book,
no, I
the
read that
podcast?
on a blog. I read that on a blog. You met a woman somewhere in the States. Her name was Debbie, and she was asking you about a job, if you have a job. Oh, no, hold on. You were at a movie set, I think, and she was asking you about a job, if you could help her about a job. She had a child, and you gave her a job or you were asking the director of the movie set, and they would hire her as an what was it?
Yes, yes, it's
Extra, I think it was an extra something, and then she stole repeatedly money from you.
yes, yes. This is all starting to come back to me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yes. I
If you want to talk about it, if not,
No, I did this movie in I think this is the same story. I did this movie in South Carolina, and one of no North Carolina, and this woman was one of the extras on the movie, and she said that she's an actress and she's mother of three and something like and she was going to come out sometime to LA, and I said, well, come out sometime and get a hold of me. Get a hold of me, and I'm working on a sitcom now. I think it was Mr. Rhodes. I think I was working on that sitcom, and I said maybe you could be an extra on the sitcom. So she ended up coming, and they thought, well, they have people that like when they do camera rehearsal, they want people to stand where the regulars are going to stand. So we don't have to do our own camera rehearsal. You have these people. And so she happened to be the right height or anything for Farrah Forkey. So she could stand in for her. And she got a regular job as a stand-in and all this. And she asked Farrah, dear Farrah, if she could put some of her luggage and stuff, she just came out, if she could put some of the luggage at her house, like in a basement or whatever. So she put the luggage in the basement. Then I hired her to be a babysitter for part-time. Everybody was chipping in, trying to make her life a little better.
When was that? 25 years ago? When you say it's a babysitter
Yeah,
for your for your children or grandchildren?
my children. So it was back when, so William is, our youngest is now 30, 31. And so this is back probably when he was 6 or 7. So we're talking like 25 years ago.
I thought it was recently.
No, I don't. Well, we'll just look up when, what was the movie I said I was doing in South Carolina? God, I remember shooting it. George Lucas was the executive producer on it. Mel Smith, Mel Smith was the director. Brian Benben was the star. Yes, I'm giving all the clues, but I'll think of the title eventually. But she was working on that movie as someone who would sit in the audience. But now she was out in LA and putting her stuff in Farrah Forkey's home in her basement, and regular job. And I figured, oh, I'd done a really good service to her. She babysat us, and then we started getting money stolen from us from the bank. Like the Bank of America was taking money from us. And she was in cahoots with one of the tellers.
How is it possible?
With check forging. So she was in cahoots. She knew where our checkbook was. She was in cahoots with one of the tellers, and she would split the money with the teller. So the teller would say, "This is good, give her cash," and he would take some cash. And we kept trying to figure out what is going on. And we ended up having to call, the FBI started wanting to know about it because it was interstate. They deal with interstate stuff. So this was like interstate fraud and everything. So I ended up talking to these FBI people. And I'm going like, what the hell is going on? Then dear Farrah, went down to the basement of her house to take a look at the stuff that I think she was calling herself Debbie at the time, had left there. And it was all IDs, driver's licenses, passports, all with different names, same pic, different name, different location of where I live. All of them like for real. Like they looked like they were all for real from different states. Like I'm from South Carolina. Oh, I'm from here. I'm from there. So in the end, I never knew really who she was. And I never really know where she lived. But I know the FBI was after her because I started getting calls from the FBI, and that like chilled my spine. So I told her, I said, this is the deal. I said, I found out about this, found out about all your IDs, and found out, this is all trouble. So leave, go, and don't ever contact me again. Don't talk to me again. Nothing. This is the only chance you're getting, because if you're here tomorrow, the FBI will be here tomorrow. So if you're going to get away, you got to get away now. And the police came in, the FBI came in, and they went, "Oh, this is an old story. We know her. She's a forger. She does this all over the place." Yeah. So she was what you call a lifetime criminal with no conscience. But she certainly knew how to play the deal, of like, here I am, please. I got these kids, please. I always wanted to be an actress, please. And she got work. She wasn't a dummy, she was able to do the job.
Did they ever catch her?
I'm not
FBI?
sure.
Do you
I'm
know
not
that?
sure. It was one of those pages of a book I was happy to turn and think like we got out of that so lucky, because the amount she stole from us wasn't, it was in our checking account. It wasn't in our savings. The damage she did to us was felony level, but it wasn't like devastating. It wasn't like she took everything we had. She could have. We got rid of her though.
Okay. My last question, Stephen.
Yes, sirrah.
Um, have you ever thought about where you would be today if you wouldn't have been successful as an actor?
Oh, God. God, I thought about that just today. And I didn't know you were going to ask that question or just think of that. I thought, what would I have done? I think what I would have done is what I did at one part of my life. I would have, what a lot of people who want to act, who don't act, do is teach acting. I would have taught drama in high school or college. I, I, if I had done that when I came out to LA, I probably would still be in LA, teaching in the LA school district, teaching acting, maybe having an acting little private acting class of mine. But everybody out here is teaching acting classes. The problem is there are not that many acting jobs to have all the people to have acting classes. Yeah, but I'd be doing theater, my first love, and teaching.
Can you actually make a living out of everything involved in acting, like teaching
Oh,
acting
you can
In Los Angeles?
you can, but it's not a royal living. It's hard. Teachers have a hard time no matter where they are because they're never paid a lot and they have a lot of responsibility. So it would have been a hard life and not a glamorous life. I'm not a person who gravitates toward glamour. I don't dig glamour at all, but I really love telling a story, whether you do it on theater or if you do it on the written word, whatever. And I love being in centers of art because I love the symphony and I love the opera and I love art galleries. So I like being in a big city. So I probably would have stayed out here and taught high school or college acting.
Do you have any other projects, upcoming projects?
Not that I know of. It's been a weird time in that projects seem to come up out of nowhere. I just did a kind of a project for Netflix with Corbin Burnson, and I just saw a part of it edited, and it's very good.
What is
And
it called?
uh, Woodstockers right now is the title, and it's about two teenagers who went to the Woodstock Festival in '68, and now they're our age, me and Corbin, and we're still living in Woodstock, and we're still smoking dope, and we're still like the heads, and it is about our lives in Woodstock that we never left, and it was very good. But Corbin is now wondering if he wants to turn it into a feature on Netflix or do it as a series on Netflix. So that's what he's aiming for. And so if we do that, that would be a ton of fun to do with Corbin and so many. Barbara Hershey was in it, and yeah, Susan Rattan. She, just great actors, and it was just a ton of fun to shoot because it was all very goofy, as you could imagine. But Corbin and I had a lot of fun doing it.
I hope they do a
Yeah,
series, yeah, weekly,
we'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed. You never know.
5 seasons.
Yes.
I love 5, 6 seasons, 8 seasons.
Yes, we love that.
Okay, Stephen, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure. My
being on my
pleasure.
podcast.
It was a ton of fun. It was great.